Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Catch Up After College podcast. We're catching up after college on the lessons of life lived by leaders. We're a safe space grounded in grace, and our aim's always to aid. We may be post-graduation, but we're never post-education. I'm Isaiah Brown, your host. Thank you for tuning in today. Today, we have the cool and caring Kirsten Way here with us. What's happening?
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good, just chilling. I see you're rocking the new AirPods, killing it.
Yes, I am.
That's awesome. Cool. We're on season 3, just with ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And yeah, I think you're an extraordinary person. So thanks for coming on.
Oh,
And you're super early too.
thank you. Yes, I had nothing else to do today, so
Hey,
I'm happy to be here.
it's convenient for me. So yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good.
But we're talking about this earlier. Heard that you started a garden in this COVID season. How's that looking?
hmm it's good. Yeah, I definitely was not a plant person at all, and my friend gave me some seeds, and I just was like, "Oh, this sounds fun. I'm bored out of my mind." So I did some research on the stuff that I got, and yeah, it just took really easily. I was able to some cucumbers and sunflowers and some other like floral arrangements and stuff. And it was just like so fast. Like everything grew so quick. And I just felt like a little grandma in my garden. It was great.
No, that's
Yeah.
cool. Would you mind giving us 3 tips to having a greener thumb? How can you be
A
better at
greener
gardening?
thumb. I would suggest research the plant that you have. If you're going to start from like a seed, research how to take care of them from the seed. Um, Yeah, make sure they're in a space where they're getting enough sunlight. I've got them on my balcony. And I mean, we're not getting any sunlight today because of the apocalypse, but
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, typically like that area gets some good sunlight in the morning. And then, yeah, don't forget to water them appropriately. So it's pretty straightforward. Plants are like people if you just pay attention and yeah, they'll grow for you. It's cool.
Yeah, and there's a custom way to take care of each of them. You want it water like a cactus, like you would an apple tree or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, they all have their like information on the back of the packet and stuff and like some plants don't need as much water as others, but yeah, you can always just check the soil like if it's dry, it needs water. That's about it.
Okay, cool. And just
Yeah.
giving
hmm
context for everyone listening, it's like a fire season in California. So we're not really going through the
Yeah.
apocalypse, but
No. Oh yeah. It does look like Mars outside today though. Like the sky is orange and it's very dark.
yeah, you might see Matt Damon wandering around. I don't know if anyone got that joke, but yeah.
I was referencing Blade Runner 2049 today. It feels
Oh,
like very dusty and orange outside. So,
hmm, that's a good
hmm
movie. It's pretty cool.
yeah. hmm
Awesome. So I think it's time to get to know you a bit better. Do you mind telling us where you're from and can you describe what your life was like before college?
Yes. I'm technically originally from Texas. I lived there for about 10 years, but I moved out to the Bay Area when I was 10 and basically been here ever since. Um, Life before college, I think, was like really small in a way. I feel like everyone that was important to me was very close by. And that's pretty standard, I think, for anyone in high school. Your world is everything that, is made up of what goes on in those high school halls. And yeah, I think before I went away to uni, like I had no idea how the world functioned outside of, American life. So it was a very routine and structured but small-minded way of life, and I didn't really get to experience anything else until I moved away.
Hmm. What city in Texas were you living in?
A few. I was born in Houston, but we lived in Lufkin, which is a very small town, and then moved to Texarkana, which is like right next to Arkansas. So very southern for sure.
Yeah. Do you mind telling us what was the culture shock of moving from Texas to the Bay Area?
Yeah, I was pretty young. But I think like the biggest culture shock for me was actually seeing like so many people of color all of a sudden. Like I definitely felt like I was in a totally new space in a new place. I mean, yeah, you go from like very white suburban Texas to the Bay Area, especially Fremont where I live, is just so diverse. And yeah, it was a big shock. And honestly, I'm so grateful I came at the age that I did. I was able to grow up around it and be inspired and encouraged and um, educated about other cultures, which was really cool. But I do remember also seeing seagulls and palm trees for the first time and being like, whoa, where am I? This is so cool.
That's awesome. And Fremont, that's pretty far from, I guess, San Francisco. I remember on BART,
Yeah.
that's always the last stop, or like last stop Fremont. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not close by, but it's the Greater Bay Area, you know. We're all still in the same hub.
Yeah. Awesome. And how did you know college was the right path for you personally?
Mm, just like college in general, or
Uh, your choice. I'll leave it up to
okay.
you.
Because the answer varies. I didn't really know if college was the right choice for me or not. Both of my parents went to university, but they never finished. They like met and then dropped out to get married. So they never finished their degrees. And for me, like it was always kind of like an unspoken pressure, like you're going to go to school, you're going to get your degree, like because life was hard for us. Um, and that's going to help you. So I went to school straight out of high school, not really anticipating, I guess, taking time to figure out what it was I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was interested in music and I was like, well, maybe I'll study music. And I didn't think about jobs after that or anything. But yeah, to answer your question, I didn't really like prepare for that in the way that I would have wanted, or in the way that I would want like my little sister to. And then, yeah, finding out that other people like take gap years and they do all of this stuff, like not going straight into it. It was definitely like I just kind of was moved along in the conveyor belt that is what I feel is the American education system. Sometimes you just kind of go to school, take out some student loans, and just run the race that's like out here for you. This is the American way. So, yeah.
Yeah. If you could do that season over again, what would you do?
Mm, honestly, I feel like I would have just taken a gap year. I would have traveled. I think the experience I wanted was independence, and I got that. I got that through dormitory experience. I got that through living in another town and making my own set of friends. But you can do that without going to a 4 year, you know? And I think, yeah, I mean, in the way that it happened, it was all wonderful and I learned a lot and it was able to kind of propel me into where I am now. But I think if I could take a beat, like the advice I give my baby sister, I'm like, hey, it's okay if you don't want to go to school straight out of high school. If you need to take time and figure it out, like especially if you don't have like a ton of finances, like student loans are like a big deal. So, like you don't want to just take out loans for a degree you don't care about, right? So, I would say pause. For me, I would have loved to travel and to get my head wrapped around the world a bit better, see another way of life, and to see if I wanted to live the life that I was like set out for here, you know?
Yeah. That's actually great advice just to pause in a season like that. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of parents, they might pressure their kids to go to college because that's, like you said, just the American way. Go to
Mm-hmm.
college, get an education, get paid, and all
Yeah.
that. But there's nothing wrong with just doing a job that you love to do. Like I personally, I I was cutting down trees and chipping them
Mm-hmm.
up and going to community college, and I wasn't going in debt or anything, but I was happy with it. I just wanted to work straight out of high school. But
Mm-hmm.
how did you feel in that season? Did you want to go straight to work or you wanted to learn more?
Uh, I don't think I knew. I don't think I knew that that was an option at all. I think I just was like, oh yeah, you go to school after you graduate high school. Like you can move away really far, you can stay close by. I tried to get as many scholarships as I could. That was a goal of mine. But I think I was more interested in the experience of college life, um, instead of like the actual education. So yeah, I don't recollect ever having gone through that thought process. It
Mhm.
just was there for me. It was like, this is what all of your students are doing at your school. I went to a private Christian school, and everyone was like very, very ambitious and very smart. They were all going to be doctors. And yeah, like that was just what was talked about in school. We're all going to uni. That's just how it is. So you would feel very out of place if you weren't also doing those things, if you weren't also taking the SATs and applying to a ton of schools. And so, I mean, I still went a very different route. I went to a Christian uni for a bit, but like all my other, classmates, they were all headed to UCs and nice Ivy League schools. And so, I mean, I think I definitely would have never thought about anything else but university after high school, because that's what everyone was doing.
Yeah. And while studying your major, well, if you don't mind telling us what it was, in what ways did it challenge your faith and vice versa?
Mm-hmm. Um, so I was actually studying at a university in Orange County, and I was studying worship, which is actually a degree at a Christian university. I only did it because I was leading worship in high school, at my church and my youth group. And I just kind of felt like it made sense. But yeah, I mean, in what ways did it challenge my faith? I think I was able to take classes that were very focused toward like pastoral leadership or discipleship and things like that. And I think those were really beneficial to my growth as a Christian. And but I also didn't feel like there was a lot of like real application towards what I was trying to study. It very much was a music degree and like a pastoral leadership degree, and so the fusion really wasn't there for the class, and they acknowledged that too in the administration and all of the professors and stuff. But it's a very complicated thing to try and sit down and teach at a university level. Like, how do we make this accredited while also making it, you know, spirit led or whatever? So I think it challenged my faith in the way that, like, I was trying to study this, on paper, what this looked like, but it wasn't really an on paper thing to study. So, yeah, I think I was able to kind of reach those experiences that I wanted through serving at churches locally, and I guess through like conversation and application with people. Yeah.
Yeah. And how did that lead into your Australian season?
Yeah, I was actually serving at a church called Cornerstone in Fountain Valley in Orange County. And through that, I met this guy called Niall Garcia. And
Oh, shout out
you
Niall
probably
and
know Niall. Shout
Brittany.
out to Niall and Brittany. Yeah, this was like before Brit's time. Well, not really,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I served with Niall's parents at church. So like his mom was my worship leader and his dad was my youth pastor, and so I was serving in the youth ministry and on the worship team for the weekends and stuff. Loads of my friends went to that church, and we just really found home there. So yeah, just hearing of Niall from his parents because he was in his first year, meeting him through FaceTime and stuff. It was a really cool experience to like kind of get like a little bit of insight from what Hillsong College was like, and living abroad, and that definitely like appealed to me. I wanted to travel. And I just remember he came home to visit for Christmas, and it was supposed to be this like, oh, Niall's moving back after 1 year. Our church is gonna like put out an album, and he's gonna help us with like all the recording and everything.
Hmm.
That feels so long ago. And he came home and he told his parents that he was gonna go back for another year. And it was just like this, like, what? You're gonna stay? Um, And yeah, he had just started dating Brittany at the time. And so I remember I led worship with him one of those weekends, and he was like, "Hey, I know I don't really know you that much, but I feel like, you know, if Hillsong College ever interests you, I feel like you would get on really well there. And yeah, maybe it's just something you should look into." And I was already having a lot of like doubts about my degree, doubts about taking out all of these loans for my degree that I didn't fully feel invested in. And I was like, oh no, like, am I regretting this? Am I,
Mhm.
you just kind of come to it like 2 years in. So yeah, he talked to me about it. He left, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about college in the way that he was doing college, and I couldn't stop thinking about, being abroad, and it just felt so like dreamlike to me. And yeah, I just researched a bunch of shows on the website all the time. And yeah, we were just like, I talked to another girl who went to my uni as well, and she had previously done Hillsong College too. And um, she was like, yeah, it's awesome. Like, I highly recommend it for anyone who wants to kind of just figure out their relationship with the Lord a bit better, and focus on, not only like college, but serving the church and being in the community. And that's kind of what I think I wanted from my university experience. And I couldn't find that necessarily without really going to like a Bible college or like something like that. And so, yeah, my transition from university to Hillsong College was like pretty streamlined. I left university. I was like, I'll just put it on pause. Maybe I'll go to Australia for a year, come back, transfer back in, kind of thing. Um, and then I wound up staying in Australia for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much like how that transition went.
Yeah. Wow. You always know someone else that I didn't know that you knew. Like, I was
Mm-hmm.
trying to find out something I was telling you earlier for something to open up the podcast, get to know you a bit better. And we had like a ton of mutual friends. I was just checking on
Yep.
Facebook. But how do you like grow your network in a way that, you know, benefits you, trying to take you forward in your, the calling on your life? Like, how do you know who to listen to and who not to listen to?
I think that's a great question. And I think that can apply to a lot of areas in your life. Like, how do you know what advice to take? And um, I think, networking aside, I think when it comes to like listening to people pouring into your life, there's some very, very easy things that you can do when you're trying to also just see if it's God speaking to you. For me, when anyone would have like something to say to me, I would, you know, obviously take it with a grain of salt. I've definitely given people words that I thought were from them that could have been totally off. And maybe I was just trying to encourage them or something. So when I was at school, like, people would have a word for me or whatever it was, I would jot it down in my notes. If it applied to me straight away, like, awesome, that was exactly what I needed to hear. If it wasn't, I'd hang on to it for a while, and sometimes it would speak to me like 2 weeks later. Um, and I think that that's a really cool thing. I think if you're reading the word and you're praying and you're listening to the Holy Spirit, like, he will show you what is from him.
Mhm.
There are very, very few instances, I think, that you'll encounter someone who's trying to, encourage you. Uh, and you have this like experience where you're like, oh my gosh, they're trying to lead me away from the Lord, like, that doesn't happen too often, especially in the church. And so I think if you are grounded in the word, I think if you're, doing your part and listening to his voice, and you're learning his voice, you'll know he speaks through other people, and you'll know when it is him. But yeah, I always say take it with a grain of salt, because we can all mean well, but it might just be like an encouragement instead of like a word from God. So I think that is like similar to like what you were asking. But yeah, for that instance, when I was trying to like move away, to Australia, I think my heart was already prepared for those conversations with people, and it came in at the right time, that it just kind of felt like, a confirmation of something God was already stirring up in me, instead of like an out of the blue, you should move to Australia. I think it was already like stirring up inside me and in my heart that this is something that I wanted to do. And I did really feel like I was going to be, blessed going there in the season that I did.
Awesome. And speaking on extraordinary people, that's the theme of this season. What character traits does a person usually have that makes them extraordinary, in your opinion?
Extraordinary. I think extraordinary people are 100% themselves. I think they're authentic. It's really easy to get swept away in the world, especially at a college age, regardless of, what age you're in school. I think it's really easy to do and to act like the people around you. And I mean, you can go off on that and say like choose good people in your circle if you want to look like them, but I think extraordinary people are authentic and they know who they are, and they're confident in that. And I don't think a lot of us understand that until we get older. I think like that's going to be all of us in our 30s. We're going to flourish, hopefully, into our authentic selves. If anything, we're going to care a little bit less about what others think about us. And I'm like fully looking forward to that. I think that's like one of the most exciting things about growing up and maturing. You're you're settled and you feel good about yourself, and I think that's a sure sign of like being extraordinary, is being authentic and, yeah, being confident in the person that God made you to be, and seeing the gold that he sees in you, treating yourself the way that he wants you to be treated, and treating yourself in the way that he sees you. I think that is what makes an extraordinary person. And those people, you're drawn to those people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, wow, like there's something special about you. And it's just them being themselves. It's them being who God called them to be. And it's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. And how do you personally not settle for the status quo, but instead to strive for excellence in every sphere of life?
Mm, status quo. I mean, I feel like in a way I've never actually settled for the status quo because I've been bored of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really don't like when people aren't themselves,
Mm-hmm.
because I just feel like it's you're taking away so much time from yourself, in the fact that you could be living this life fully,
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, I don't know. I think just like in ways that like I would want to do it and stay away from the status quo would just be, yeah, keeping an authentic relationship with Jesus. I think that's going to be the groundwork for all of us. Um, and making sure that you have people in your circle that you can be that person to, that you can be, intimate with. I think a lot of loneliness comes from a lack of connection and a lack of intimacy. And we strive to not be lonely. We strive to be liked by others. And so a lot of the time we give up vulnerability for that. We're like, oh, well, I'm just going to be this person. I'll be the funny person in this circle. And people like that, at first, but that's all it kind of amounts to after a while. You're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh man, like I never am able to have like a real chat with this person. And I think that's where you lose your authenticity. That's where you kind of go with the status quo, because you think you know what people want, when in reality people just want to be known, they want to be loved, and they want to be seen. And yeah, I think going against the grain in that way, that's been something that's benefited me. Like, of course I'll be like a little bit, I'm not like that super vulnerable person all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, you need to have a balance, and yeah, that's sort of what I've done for myself, if that answers your question.
No, that's great. Speaking of balance, how do you know when to keep your guard up and when to bring it down?
Mm. I feel like I've been very lucky in being able to discern people pretty easily. And by that, I mean, like, I'm able to see if they're going to be, a life giving person in my life, or if they're going to be someone that I need to pour into. You can kind of suss those things out. And um, I mean, there's so many different kinds of people. But for me, like, when I want to put my guard up, it's when I know that it's not going to be a two-way give and take relationship. I know I'm going to be fully giving or pouring into them or discipling them. And I tend to keep my guard up a little bit more on those because um, I know those people aren't going to be able to offer me what I need in a real true friendship or relationship. So sometimes those tend to stay a bit more like surface level, or they tend to be a little bit more um, detached, if you will. Like, um, yeah, you give someone advice, for instance, and they are super receptive, they hear you or whatever, but then they don't take it. And then they
Mm,
come back to you and they're like, oh my gosh, I have so many problems, like blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what happened to
mm,
the advice I gave you? So you go about giving them more advice and then they don't take it. So for me, those kinds of relationships are a little
mhm,
bit more detached or uninvested. Yeah, I'm going to work on loving you. I'm still going to pray for you. I still
mhm,
want to see the best in you. But when they don't also want the best in themselves by like acting on the things that are good for them,
mhm.
then I feel like that's where I put my guard up on relationships like that. I hope that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. That's some people are coming up in my mind. I'm not going to say them out
Oh
loud.
yeah, I feel like we all have them, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But
Yeah.
cool. So, what's the most practical way you put to use everything that you studied so far?
That's a good question. Yeah, I did a super roundabout way of studying for sure. But the most practical use, I think, would be in conversations with people. I think I learned the most from Hillsong College in just my own personal growth, as well as like how to talk to people and how to love on people, because they teach you how to like serve in church, right? They teach you what it is to do church well, and church is essentially built of people. So I mean, there's so many relational aspects to what I've learned, and I think, yeah, there's a very practical application in like serving at church with you, on a Sunday morning. Like, yeah, sure, I was taught how to do this and this and this very practically. But I think more than anything, sitting down and having the conversation um, about what it is to, grow in our walk with Jesus, or figure out where the problem is in our life, like everything's going wrong. I tend to figure out, oh my gosh, like that's probably because I have not worked or paid attention to my relationship with the Lord. And I feel like that has been my most practical application. I think, being in a sphere of people who are all trying to accomplish a very similar goal. They all
Mhm,
want to graduate, yes. They all want to grow in their walk with Christ, yes. And it's a really encouraging place to be. And I think like coming out of that, I've been able to like take under my wing a bit more of what it is to do that walk one on one with Jesus, but also what it is to do it with people alongside you. I think that's been my most practical use. It's like a very, very stripped back version of what church looks like, but it's like that's life. You want that community around you always. And yeah, being able to sit down and just have a conversation well, hopefully,
mhm.
um, I think has been my biggest benefit from my studies so far.
Awesome. And do you mind telling us what you do right now for work and how this season has looked like while being in school as well?
Yeah, it's been a weird season, Isaiah. It's been like, I'm sure everyone can attest to that. I mean, it's orange outside,
Yeah.
but I've been sitting in this like coming back transition from Australia. I moved back last year, and coming back here to America, specifically to the Bay Area, was not only like just a trying to figure out like what it is that's important to me again. But it's felt very much like a transitional period. For a while, I was not planning to stick around very long. And so I was also very detached in, I think, the things here.
Mhm.
And that included my job. So I am currently working as a barista at a cafe, which is like
Hey.
such an Aussie job to have. Um, yeah, and it's been awesome. But with like the pandemic and everything, there's not really been room for, growth to, get a career.
Mhm.
Uh, I've also, been battling like, do I go back to school? Like I went away to Australia and I said I was going to go back to school when I eventually came back. That's always been something I wanted to do. Hopefully now that I know what I want to do.
Mhm.
So yeah, I prayed about it and I just was like, I mean, we're in this shelter in place. We're in the middle of a pandemic. It's like the world came to a halt. And yeah, we're all given this weird forgiveness card, this big grace period that's like, hey, we're all trying. So I was like, why don't I just look into online school, something I never considered before. I want to be in person,
Mhm.
but that's not an option really right now. And wanting to study in Europe personally, wanted to go away again and
Yeah.
study abroad, but like that's also not an option. And so I started looking into online school and I was like, what if I just work, while we're in this downtime, while we're in this weird season that this pandemic is, why don't I just like put in a bit of work on my end? And so I decided to do that. It was a very easy process. Got transferred into a school online, and yeah, I feel really lucky to be able to to go to this job that's like very like teenage dream,
Yeah.
and work a couple shifts a week because we
Mhm.
don't actually like have a lot of hours available because of the pandemic. So I'm like taking in some unemployment on the side and
Mhm.
studying. It's like the perfect storm for me,
Yeah.
it's not the dream life, but in a way it's like I'm able to like kind of like put my head down and just get to work in the quiet season that this is. And there's so much grace for it. Anything outside of this pandemic, I would personally, I would think that I would be embarrassed by it. I didn't like telling people that I was at a cafe. Like that wasn't like a career choice of mine,
Mm.
or studying online wasn't something that I would have been like super proud of because I just never finished my degree. I'm like
Mhm.
almost 27 and I feel like the American in me is like, oh, you're behind, you're the
Mhm.
late bloomer. And I have always kind of done things a very different way, but in a way I've been so grateful for what this season is to allow me to forgive myself for that, or like to give myself grace in that. And I don't think anyone else really would have had a problem with my job or where I'm at in life. I think it was me, putting those pressures on myself. And in this way, I've been able to kind of like take a beat and look at the things that are important and give myself some grace because everyone's in a very similar boat. So I think I got off kind of lucky in doing that at this time.
Yeah, but that's real. Like I came back from, well, given context, we were both in the same school. I think you arrived
Hmm.
like a semester right before I left personally, or who knows. When did you arrive?
January 2015.
Okay, 2 semesters before I left. So when you get back from Australia, you're working all these jobs. Before I was a basketball coach, I was a waiter while doing school full
Hmm.
time, and then to go through all that crazy stuff, you expect like maybe a dream job on the other side. I ended up back at Starbucks, kind of like you, same thing, barista
Hmm.
season. How do you keep your ambition and keep shooting for your dream job through this in between season?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think we talk about it a lot.
Mhm.
You're kind of left to fend for yourself a bit. There is a very specific group that has the study abroad life and then moves back to where they came from. And there's a very specific set of challenges that comes with that, and no one addresses it. And that is the am I backtracking because I'm moving back where I came from? Am I, regressing? Am I still moving forward? And those are all questions I've struggled with and sometimes still continue to do so. But for me, like, a goal of mine since moving to Australia and since learning that I am very for social justice, and I want to explore the realm of that through education a bit more. School has been a very practical application for me there. I think just sitting down and being able to actually study something that I'm interested in and will hopefully propel me forward either to a master's or into another, job that seems to be more up my alley. Like, I know it's going to be long term, like this whole process of reaching my goal, if you will. It's not going to be that short term. Like, I got a tech job in the Bay Area kind of thing, and now I'm making all this money. And I think for me in the transition season, realizing and re-acknowledging that God is still here in this season has been a beautiful revelation. There's a piece about it, about being here and investing in the people here that I would never have given a second thought. But I mean, the Lord has been patient with me, and it's been nothing like I expected. I did not expect to make so many friends, to have so many real conversations with people. This was kind of my last resort to move back home. But yeah, I also feel like I've learned a lot, and God has shown me things that I think I may have been too busy for otherwise, So my advice, I guess, for the transition season is to just be paying more attention, come back home in the sense that he's calling you back home to him as well. Because I was swept up in the busyness of life, and I was, taken with the idea of more travel, and that is still out there. That will still come. But sometimes God pulls you back to him, and he's like, hey, I just want you to pay attention to me again. I want to reveal some things to you and show you who I am, and show you what I will do in this world through you and through my people. And that, I think, has been just a kind reminder. And he's just blessed me with beautiful relationships along the way as well. Yeah, just totally unexpected. Nothing I could have pictured, and nothing I could have, designed myself at all. I was supposed to be in and out in like 3-4 months. And yeah, this has not been the worst case scenario at all. Like, it's not at all what I thought. So, I mean, yeah, just hold out hope that God does know what's best for you, and he will give you those things. He knows the desires of your heart. And yeah, keep pursuing the dreams that he's put in you as well. And if that looks small, that's okay. Give yourself grace for that. Like, take small baby steps. You're still moving forward. Yeah.
Awesome. And jumping into the topic of leadership, you did 3 years, correct? At Hillsong Leadership College. So for everyone listening, it's quite an interesting program. The first year, you're like, just a volunteer on the ground. Second year, you're a leader of those volunteers. Third year, you're the leader of those volunteers. What's the difference to you, Kirsten, between managing and leading people?
Managing. Ooh, that's a good question. Managing and leading people, I think, is a very stark difference. Managing people is the very transactional stuff. It's the delegating, it's the to-do lists, it's the I need to get things done by a certain date, certain time. And we all need managers in our life, and we all, that's just how the world works. That's how it functions. That's how you get stuff done. Management is great. Leading, however, I think is a lot more like interpersonal. I think it's more about who you are and how we want to see you grow as a person. So I think, like, a manager would say, hey, I need this and this done by this time. Can you make that happen? Cool. And they detach and move on to something else. Whereas I think a leader would be like, hey, we need to get this and this done, but let's do it together.
Mhm.
Also, how are you? Like I'm
Yeah.
checking in on you as a person. Yeah, I think a leader is a lot more someone like who is alongside you in the process, where a manager is just kind of delegating tasks. It's more transactional, and you need both in your life. But um, and we did both at Hillsong College. We
Mhm.
managed people as well, for sure. But that it does say something about having a leader in your life who sees potential in you, who sees gold in you, and is trying to pull it out, and not just give you things to do.
Yeah. Man, I just keep thinking of Starbucks again. Just for examples. So I once had a shift manager. She would just tell me what to do and then go on the back and expect me to like clean the whole place while doing the register while making drinks. And I'm the only person out there. But then you
Oh
have
no.
another person. Yeah, exactly. Then you have another leader. He would be like, hey, we're going to clean this whole place, but I'm going to be working on the left. You work on the right. We meet in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel so much
Mm-hmm.
more empowered through that experience.
Mm-hmm.
But
Definitely. And you want to work with them again, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a huge difference just on like likability and all of that stuff because yeah, leaders, they get down on their hands and knees and they do the dirty work too. And I
Mhm.
think we can get that confused. Leaders don't just delegate, they walk alongside.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. So, what's the newest dream on the horizon now that you've gone through this crazy coming back to home phase? What's the newest dream?
Mm-hmm. The newest dream is um to finish my bachelor's. I left for a while, and so I'm finally back in school, and I'm so grateful to and just proud of myself, I think, for just finally doing it and just like getting back into it and not making excuses anymore. But yeah, I just want to get that finished ideally before I turn 30, and that's a
Mhm.
very achievable goal. So that is my newest dream on the horizon. But to do it well, as well as I can while we're here. So, yep, that's my newest dream.
Awesome. And any books, podcasts, music, anything you recommend right now?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Books. so so I'm like, which is a little bit surprising for me. People probably don't know, but I go through like book slumps.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm a big reader, but yeah, I go through these times where I'm just not at all thinking about books, which is crazy.
Mhm.
So for me, I've actually been reading this same book for a long time. Granted, it's like 1,000 pages, so
Yeah.
that's okay. Um, but I'm finally gearing up towards the end of it. This beautiful Japanese book. It's called
Whoa.
1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. This is only a portion of it. He like split it up into 3 paperbacks so you could like take it with you.
Mhm.
So I'm finally on the last one, and it's just so good. Like the storytelling is awesome. It's whimsical fiction. So if you like that kind of stuff, like it's translated really well. And yeah, his writing is amazing. So I've been loving that still, taking it so incredibly slower than I've ever taken books before. But yeah, I've loved that. And then I just picked up my first Russian literature. So I picked up Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky. I don't know if you know Delmar King.
Yeah.
You know
Mhm.
Delmar?
Mhm.
Beautiful. Of course. What another shout out. Hello, Delmar.
Hey.
He introduced me to Dostoevsky a while back, and I read a short story by him, and I was like, this is not hard to read at all. For some reason,
Mhm.
I thought Russian literature was going to be like this big, scary thing. And so then after being, introduced to that, I was recommended one of the books, and yeah, hopefully I'll get to break into that soon. So that's books.
Nice.
Music, I make playlists every month for my friends.
Oh, and for
So
church.
And for church, I guess we're not really, doing it for church right now. So I've just been posting them on my Instagram, on my Spotify.
Okay.
I haven't finished September's yet. This is the latest I've ever been, and it's probably due to school and stuff. But
Mhm.
yeah, I will be posting a playlist for September, for the month of September. And that's just the music that I'm listening to. But I've gotten such good feedback from friends. They're just like, oh, this is so crazy. I would never listen to stuff like this. And I just love it.
Mhm.
So I love doing that for myself and for people. But yeah, I have them all saved like on my Instagram under like the playlist highlight. So you can always find them there if you're looking for new music. And then
Nice.
podcasts, I don't listen to a ton of podcasts, but there is one that I have loved, which is John Mark Comer. He is a pastor up in Portland. He runs this podcast called This Cultural Moment, and it's just kind of like talking about the world today and how to be, a Christian walking through it. And so he has this other pastor from Melbourne called Mark Sayers, and they go back and forth on it, and it's just like it's been so good. Like I found it in Sydney when I was there, and I was like, oh, I love this so much. So he just always hits on like the current stuff and like I guess the questions that we as Christians would have through those. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And I, it sounded like, or I guess it looked like I was looking down, but that's because I'm writing down all your recommendations. So
Oh,
yeah,
sure. No
I always
worries.
forget to get that reminder before you go into it, but next time.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Cool. All right. Last question for you. Thanks for sticking around
Okay.
so far.
Of course.
If there was one thing you could ask your future self, what would it be? And if there's one thing you could tell your high school self, what would it be?
Wow. That's a great question. Wow, wow, wow. One thing I could ask myself, maybe, hmm, should I cut my hair really short? Will I regret it? I like,
Wow.
I've always wanted to do the big chop, and I think I'll get to it eventually, but maybe that's what I would ask myself. I don't want to ask anything too serious because I think I just want to make my own decisions. But if
Yeah.
I could tell myself anything from, that high school version of myself, I think I would mention all the stuff I said at the beginning, the stuff I've wound up telling my sister,
Mhm.
which is like, don't be afraid to take your time in figuring out this life. Don't be afraid to um, take a gap year or
Mhm.
two or three and go travel and see how other countries live their lives and how other people talk and think and act.
Mhm.
I think you're going to be incredibly surprised, not only to find Jesus in all those corners, but to create bonds with people and learn so many things about yourself through that you don't necessarily need to occupy yourself with the pressures that you're experiencing,
Mhm.
right now. The world is a lot bigger than you think, and it's only going to continue getting bigger and bigger. And there's so much more to it, and you're going to fall in love with it 100%. Yeah, I think I would love to have known that.
Awesome. Good stuff. Yeah, you made it through. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me. This was cool.
Yeah. And just want to encourage you before you go that I believe that the goodness on you as a person is really a reflection of how good God is because you know who he is and you truly know the importance of community and that as you make God's priorities your priorities, you'll just continue to move forward in all that he has for you. So, yeah, I think it's pretty awesome. You
Thanks,
dropped a lot of
Isaiah.
gold today. It's all good.
Oh, thank you. That's
Cool,
really
cool.
sweet. I appreciate that.
No worries. And anything you want to promote, maybe those Spotify playlists, how we can get a hold of them.
Yeah. Okay. So it's all on my Instagram highlights. I guess that might be the easiest way to find it. And my Instagram is at Kirsten Way. So KEARSE_WAY. And they're all just chilling there right on the highlights
Oh, okay.
playlists. Yeah. So that's how you can find them.
Awesome. I didn't even know that was a thing, the highlights, but now I know.
Yeah, you can like save your stories if you want to create like a kind of story. Like I have like books and stuff on there too. So,
Okay, cool. Good to know.
hmm
Very good. All right. Well,
yeah.
once again, thanks for coming on and take care.
Yeah. Thanks, Isaiah. Have a good day.
You too. And for everyone else, until next time, as we're maturing, we're going to keep learning, stirring up, and chasing after what our Creator created us to do. So have a good one, everyone. Peace.